When the player is killed in SCP Containment Breach, the bottom of the "You Died" pop-up window will display a message that explains their death. These messages are styled as a post-mortem report of D9341's body as it was found by the Nine-Tailed Fox or other such facility personnel post-breach. Whether they're a straightforward report of the body's condition or a quote from some researcher about it, it's a fantastic way to keep the player's deaths immersive and grounded in the universe, rather than just being a fail state in a video game. The death messages are surprisingly detailed, with there being 71 total death messages that the player can see, depending on what kills them and when or where it happens. So on this simpler episode of SCP Containment Breach EX, I will show each and every one of these death messages and explain what causes them to appear. I'll also go over certain oddities or fun facts about them while I'm at it. Many of these messages are very obscure, something most players have never encountered on their own, so there's a pretty good chance you'll be learning something new today. Either way, I hope you enjoy. Brief content warning. This video will contain sometimes very gruesome descriptions of bodily harm and injuries and the like, as many of the death messages are of that nature. If that type of thing bothers you, then approach this video with caution. Before we get into the video proper though, I'll quickly explain the mechanics and code behind the death messages, seeing as it is incredibly simple. The game has a global string variable, death message, which is empty the majority of the time. However, certain things in the game will set it to one of the predefined death messages, which will then be displayed in the "You Died" window. In 1.3.11, these messages were all hard-coded, but 1.3.12 moves them to a strings.ini file, which does mean that you can change them to whatever you want. So for example, when the player is killed by SCP-049, his behavior has a section of code that runs what happens, including triggering the actual death of the player. But before then, his behavior code sets the death message for a standard 049 death, which is then displayed when the "You Died" window appears. Some enemies will set a death messages upon merely injuring you, such as the two types of zombies or the Nine-Tailed Fox. The intention here is that should you bleed out from their injuries, the game will blame the enemy that hit you most recently as the source of it, which is a cool detail. This does mean that just bleeding out on its own doesn't set a death message, and the game doesn't always account for this, as we'll see many times. On top of that, there are a few rarer ways to die in this game that also don't set a death message, possibly from an oversight or the developers just thinking that nobody would get themselves killed in that particular way. Finally, a couple of deaths will purposefully set the death message to be blank, which I think is supposed to imply that D9341's body was never found and thus no report was made on him. You'd think the Foundation would want to keep track of their missing Class Ds, but I guess these guys didn't care enough. And that's the extent of how the death messages work. Extremely simple, but very effective. Now let's go through each death message one by one and explain how to get it. The first death message in the game appears in the intro sequence. Dying to SCP-173 inside his chamber gives the message, Subject D9341. Cause of death, fatal cervical fracture. According to Security Chief Franklin, who was present at SCP-173's containment chamber during the breach, the subject was killed by SCP-173 as soon as the disruptions in the electrical network started. This does mean that disobeying the guards earlier in the intro, either by refusing to leave your cell or trying to run away, will not give any special death messages. What will, however, is running right up towards Agent Ulgrin directly after the breach. If you do this, he will turn and shoot you dead, giving the message, Subject D9341, cause of death, gunshot wound to the head. The surveillance tapes confirm that the subject was terminated by Agent Ulgrin shortly after the site lockdown was initiated. Getting into the game proper, 173 has 3 additional death messages that can appear depending on which room you're in when he kills you. For the majority of rooms, dying to him yields the short and sweet message of Subject D9341, cause of death, fatal cervical fracture, assumed to be attacked by SCP-173. Dying to 173 inside of either the large room with the starting equipment and the wallet, a lock room, or SCP-895, the coffin's chamber, will give a slightly different message. Cause of death, fatal cervical fracture. The surveillance tapes confirm that the subject was killed by SCP-173. The implication is that the player died in a room with security cameras, especially the rooms that have those camera monitors visible in them. If we ignore the fact that many other rooms in the facility also have security cameras, and that the freaking surveillance room was excluded from the list of rooms that show this message, this is a pretty cool detail, and I'm glad it was included. The final 173 death message occurs if he kills you in the T-shaped lock rooms, and this message is pretty funny. If I'm not mistaken, one of the main purposes of these rooms was to stop SCP-173 from moving further in the event of a containment breach. So whose brilliant idea was it to put a goddamn man-sized ventilation duct in there? A very good question. There are 3 distinct ways to die to SCP-106. Being caught by him inside the pocket dimension gives Subject D9341, body partially decomposed by what is assumed to be SCP-106's corrosion effect, body disposed of via incineration. Falling into the void below the 2 flying stone bridges gives, in addition to the decomposed appearance typical of the victims of SCP-106, the subject appears to have suffered multiple heavy fractures to both of his legs. Strangely, this message doesn't appear upon falling into the void below the pillar room. Instead, there's just no death message at all. Being hit by one of the flying stones will give, in addition to the decomposed appearance typical of SCP-106's victims, the body exhibits injuries that have not been observed before. Massive skull fracture, 3 broken ribs, fractured shoulder, and multiple heavy lacerations. Those stones are not to be messed with. If you linger too long next to SCP-1048-A when it screams, your body will slowly be covered in ears, which leads to your death, giving the message, "A dead body covered in ears was found in redacted. Subject was presumably attacked by an instance of SCP-1048-A and suffocated to death by the ears. Body was sent for autopsy." For a couple more basic death messages, dying to a Tesla gate or to standing in decontamination gas too long give fairly unremarkable death messages. But they do exist. Putting yourself through SCP-914, the refining machine, on rough yields a heavily mutilated corpse found inside the output booth of SCP-914. DNA testing identified the corpse as Class D Subject D9341. The subject had obviously been refined by SCP-914 on the rough setting, but we are still confused as to how he ended up inside the intake booth and who or what wound the key. Strangely, this message starts with a quotation, even though it's structured as a report and not a quote from someone. It also doesn't end with a quotation, which tells me it wasn't supposed to be a quote from someone in the first place. Perhaps just a small mistake. Upon refining yourself on fine or very fine, you'll get a buff called Superman that will tremendously increase your movement speed. However, it will also kill you after 50 seconds, which displays a Class D jumpsuit found in Data Redacted. Upon further examination, the jumpsuit was found to be filled with 12.5 kilograms of blue ash-like substance. Chemical analysis of the substance remains non-conclusive, most likely related to SCP-914. Mr. Stark, I don't feel so good. The final 914-related death message occurs when touching the strange battery you receive upon refining any battery on fine or very fine. Subject D9341 found dead inside SCP-914's output booth next to what appears to be an ordinary 9-volt battery. The subject is covered in severe electrical burns and assumed to be killed via an electrical shock caused by the battery. The battery has been stored for further study. This means that putting yourself through 914 on course will not have a special death message, even though doing so leaves you horrifically injured. It's just one of many cases where bleeding out from something yields no message. Since there are so many of those cases, I won't mention them unless there's something special about it. Dying to a chomp from SCP-939 gives all 4 escaped SCP-939 specimens have been captured and recontained successfully. 3 of them made quite a mess at Storage Area 6. A cleaning team has been dispatched. Versions of Containment Breach prior to 1.3 had a much smaller Storage Area 6 that only had 2 instances of SCP-939 inside, and this death message did indeed reflect that. The fact that developers updated this death message in accordance to the expansion of the area goes to show the amazing attention to detail for this game. Though it is weird that they bothered to make this tiny change, and yet there are so many bleed-out related deaths that were left without a message at all, but it's whatever. Speaking of no message, falling into the empty elevator shaft here results in a death that purposefully sets the death message blank, one of only 2 deaths in the game to do so. Being beaten up by the shadow demons from SCP-205 will show The SCP-205 cycle seems to have resumed its normal course after the anomalies observed during Redacted. The body of Subject D9341 was discovered inside the chamber. The subject exhibits signs of blunt force trauma typical for personnel who have entered the chamber when the lights are off. The reason why this message talks about the SCP-205 cycle slowing down is because in the actual SCP article, the whole process of the shadows in 205 occurs over the course of 6 months. Obviously, that wouldn't work for Containment Breach, so they drastically speed up the cycle and explain it in-game as some weird anomalous effect never observed before. Then, after the breach, it just slows back down. I guess all the surrounding chaos really excited the lamps and they wanted to join in too. Writing too much music onto SCP-012 will display Subject D9341 found in a pool of blood next to SCP-012. Subject seems to have ripped open his wrists and written 3 extra lines to the composition before dying of blood loss. One of the more gruesome deaths for sure. SCP-1025 has only one disease that kills you, and that's cardiac arrest. This death will yield the message, he died of a cardiac arrest after reading SCP-1025, that's for sure. Is there such a thing as psychosomatic cardiac arrest, or does SCP-1025 have some anomalous properties we are not yet aware of? This message kind of confuses me. Like, yes, it has anomalous properties. It's an SCP! You guys locked it up for that reason! And it's not like it's doing something new. The book is afflicting the condition that D9341 read about, which is the whole thing the SCP does. I guess they just didn't expect cardiac arrests to be covered in the book? Using SCP-1162, the hole in the wall, up to 4 times in a row without any items in your inventory will give a dead Class D subject was discovered within the containment chamber of SCP-1162. An autopsy revealed that his right lung was missing, which suggests interaction with SCP-1162. I think a lot more than just the right lung is missing. This message is also strange to me, not the message itself, but rather how you get it. Using 1162 without items once damages you by 5 injuries, an extremely high amount of damage. But no death message is set, so bleeding out yet again leaves no message after the beep. However, using 1162 without items will only kill you if your injuries is higher than 15 afterwards, meaning that if you're at full health, you need to use it 4 times in order to see this message. This makes this death message one of the most remote in the entire game. Gaining access to SCP-1499, the Soviet gas mask, comes with 3 different death messages. Dying to the 1499-1s in the Dimension gives, all personnel situated within Evacuation Shelter LC-2 during the breach have been administered Class B amnestics due to Incident 1499-E. The Class D subject involved in the event died shortly after being shot by Agent Redacted. Dying to a 1499-1 outside of the Dimension, which is possible by refining 1499 itself on Very Fine, yields an unidentified male and a deceased Class D subject were discovered in Redacted by the Nine-Tailed Fox. The man was described as highly agitated and seemed to only speak Russian. He's been taken to a temporary holding area at Redacted while waiting for a translator to arrive. Finally, being infected by SCP-008, the zombie virus, and succumbing to the infection inside of the 1499 dimension will give. The whereabouts of SCP-1499 are still unknown, but a recon team has been dispatched to investigate reports of a violent attack to a church in the Russian town of Redacted. For some extra context, the dimension SCP-1499 takes you to is actually just Russia, according to these details and the original SCP article. I'm not sure why the default death message has D9341 attacking staff in an evacuation shelter then, or how the monster you summon from refining the mask on Very Fine turns into a normal guy afterwards. But these are still 3 of my favorite death messages in the game, just from how many questions they raise about this SCP and its capabilities. When the doctor arrives, he can cause 2 different death messages. Dying to his touch in most areas will give. An active instance of SCP-049-2 was discovered in Redacted, terminated by Nine-Tailed Fox. Dying to his touch while inside his containment chamber will first play a special death scene where you get to watch the Nine-Tailed Fox terminate you as a zombie, and then you get 3 active instances of SCP-049-2 discovered in the tunnel outside SCP-049's containment chamber, terminated by Nine-Tailed Fox. By the way, SCP-049-2s are zombies that 049 creates from the victims he kills. And if these zombies were to hit you, cause bleeding, and then you were to bleed out from their wounds, this yields the message, Subject D9341. Cause of death, multiple lacerations, and severe blunt force trauma caused by an instance of SCP-049-2. It's worth noting that the zombies cannot directly kill the player. They can only damage them, so bleeding out from their injuries is the only way to see this message. Of all the main enemies in the game, SCP-096 has the fewest death messages by far, that being only one. A large amount of blood found in Data Redacted, DNA identified as Subject D9341, most likely Data Redacted by SCP-096. The detail that they only know who it is from inspecting the DNA in the blood has always been incredibly chilling to me. Though it kinda lightens up when you notice the typo. Indentified. SCP-895, the camera-shy coffin, has 3 different ways of killing the player. Looking at the camera screen in or perhaps beyond its chamber will give... What we know is that he died of cardiac arrest. My guess is that it was caused by SCP-895, although it has never been observed affecting video equipment from this far before. Further testing is needed to determine whether SCP-895's red zone is increasing. Wearing night vision goggles and walking up to SCP-895 will result in a similar death, which gives the message, Class D viewed SCP-895 through a pair of digital night vision goggles, killing him. I love how short and curt this message is. You can tell the staff thought D9341 was an absolute idiot for doing this. However, if you instead wear the blue or red night vision goggles, both obtained from SCP-914 refinements, and die that way, the message will be different. Class D viewed SCP-895 through a pair of digital night vision goggles, presumably enhanced by SCP-914. It might be possible that the subject was able to resist the mimetic effects partially through these goggles. The goggles have been stored for further study. The death message doesn't lie, as it does take longer for 895 to kill you with either of these goggles on than with the normal ones. SCP-035, the Comedy Mask's chamber, will slowly damage you for standing in it, and for once there's actually a special bleed-out death message if you bleed out while inside the chamber. Class D Subject D9341 found dead inside SCP-035's containment chamber. The subject exhibits heavy hemorrhaging of blood vessels around the eyes and inside the mouth and nose. Sent for autopsy. Bleeding out after leaving the chamber will give no death message like usual. If you're instead killed by the tentacle-like growths, you'll get... We will need more than the regular cleaning team to take care of this. 2 large and highly active tentacle-like appendages seem to have formed inside the chamber. Their level of aggression is unlike anything we've seen before. It looks like they've beaten some unfortunate Class D to death at some point during the breach. If you find 035's body in the entrance zone, the tentacle that appears there will give a different death message if it kills you. 1 large and highly active tentacle-like appendage seems to have grown outside the dead body of a scientist within Office Area Redacted. Its level of aggression is unlike anything we've seen before. It looks like it has beaten some unfortunate Class D to death at some point during the breach. If you leave SCP-427, the Healing Locket, opened too long, you will eventually be killed from turning into a giant mutant tissue monster. Well, okay, you're technically not killed, but the game kills you for it, so whatever. Anyway, this gives the simple message, requesting support from MTF News 7. We need more firepower to take this thing down. For all the crap the nine-tailed fucks put you through in the latter half of the game, being able to put this much pressure on them is really satisfying, even if it is through a death. The SCP-008 infected zombie in the medical bay leads us to 3 different death messages. Bleeding out from the zombie's damage yields Subject D9341, cause of death, multiple lacerations, and severe blunt force trauma caused by Data Expunged, who was infected with SCP-008. Said subject was located by Nine-Tailed Fox and terminated. Whoops, they forgot a period. Specifically, the 1.3.12 developers did, because the period is there in 1.3.11. Anyway, just like 049-2, this message only appears from bleeding out, as the zombie is unable to kill you directly. Being hit by the zombie also infects you with SCP-008, and should you weigh out the infection while inside the facility, you'll get a special death scene where D9341 eats a scientist, followed by Subject D9341 found ingesting Dr. Redacted at Sector Redacted. Subject was immediately terminated by Nine-Tailed Fox and sent for autopsy. SCP-008 infection was confirmed, after which the body was incinerated. If you instead wait out the infection while inside one of the ending zones, you'll get Subject D9341 found wandering around somewhere. Subject was immediately terminated by Nine-Tailed Fox and sent for autopsy. SCP-008 infection was confirmed, after which the body was incinerated. The somewhere in the message will be either Gate A or Gate B, depending on which one you were in when you died. Now we arrive at the beast in SCP-860-1, the Blue Forest, whose death is the second death in the game to set the death message blank on purpose. This one makes much more sense to me, since falling down the elevator shaft wouldn't mean that D9341 is just gone forever. If they ever get around to fixing that elevator, they'd find his body and report it. Here, however, D9341's body is lost in the anomalous interdimensional forest where no one will find it. The ominously empty death message you receive here makes a lot of sense in this case, and I quite like it. Turning SCP-420-J, the weed, into a joint or smelly joint via 914 will cause the item to instantly kill you, followed by Subject D9341 found in a comatose state in Data Redacted. The subject was holding what appears to be a cigarette while smiling widely. Chemical analysis of the cigarette has been inconclusive, although it seems to contain a high concentration of an unidentified chemical, whose molecular structure is remarkably similar to that of tetrahydrocannabinol. The next 21 death messages come from none other than SCP-294. Drinks from 294 can have a death message parameter, which will set the death message to whatever is written in SCP-294.ini, as long as the drink also has either a lethal, death timer, or explosion parameter set. 294 drinks can also damage you with the damage parameter, but those drinks will not set whatever death message you may have written in the death message parameter. You need one of the other three parameters in order for the game to acknowledge your death message. Anyway, 294 drinks will either kill you immediately upon consumption, kill you after a certain delay specified by the drink, or explode upon being dispensed from the machine. The death message that is given will depend on the drink that was ordered and/or consumed. Since they all kill you in the same ways and there's so many of them, I personally don't feel like reading all of these messages out, so I'll show them on screen here along with which drink gives the message. However, even though there are 21 death messages from 294 drinks, there are more than 21 drinks that kill the player. The following drinks will all kill the player upon consumption, but they do not have a death message parameter set, which results in no death message appearing. It's kinda odd, they went into so much detail on 294 death messages in particular, and then they just decided not to bother with some drinks, leaving the death message completely empty even though D9341's body would still be present in the facility. Only a few death messages remain. First is the Nine-Tailed Fox, who have two simple death messages. If one of their bullets directly kills the player, then it will display Subject D9341, terminated by Nine-Tailed Fox. If the player survives the gunshots but then bleeds out afterwards, it will instead display Subject D9341, died of blood loss after being shot by Nine-Tailed Fox. I've always loved that little detail. Then the next three death messages occur if the player is killed within the ending zones. If they die to this guard perched on the wall in Gate B, this yields Agent G to control, eliminated a Class D escapee in Gate B's courtyard. So apparently this guy is named Agent G. G for Gregory, George, Giovanni, Gabriel, Bruntilda, Gate B Guard, Godric the Grafted, Gordon Freeman, we can only speculate. Being gunned down by one of the helicopters instead will give CH2 to control, shot down a runaway Class D at a place. A place can be either Gate A or B, just like with the 008 message. Though it's more likely to be Gate B because I couldn't get the helicopters to notice me at Gate A. That is every death message that is viewable without using the console. The remaining 4 can only be seen through certain cheats. First up, if you spawn SCP-1123, the skull, outside of its chamber, trying to pick it up will kill you instead of starting its usual event, which will give the message, Subject D9341 was shot dead after attempting to attack a member of Nine-Tailed Fox. Surveillance tapes showed that the subject had been wandering around the site approximately 9 minutes prior, shouting the phrase, "Get rid of the 4 pests" in Chinese. SCP-1123 was found in Redacted nearby, suggesting the subject had come into physical contact with it. How exactly SCP-1123 was removed from its containment chamber is still unknown. According to some people in the comments the last time I brought up this fact, it was possible to pick up 1123 if you had SCP-714, the Jade Ring, equipped. But this is only in older versions of the game and/or mods. 1.3.11 and 1.3.12 both prevent you from picking up 1123 under any circumstances. This also explains why 1123 has an inventory sprite despite it not being visible in the game. It used to be visible in the game, but now it isn't. The final 4 death messages are randomly chosen upon using the kill command. The first 2 are just Redacted and Exception Access Violation, the latter of which referencing the infamous Memory Access Violation, a crash error that plagued older versions of Containment Breach. The latter 2 messages are much more involved. Subject D9341 found dead in Sector Redacted. The subject appears to have attained no physical damage, and there is no visible indication as to what killed him. Body was sent for autopsy. Subject D9341 found dead in Sector Redacted. The subject appears to have scribbled the letters KYS in his own blood beside him. No other signs of physical trauma or struggle can be observed. Body was sent for autopsy. I love how they decided to add special death messages for using this cheat, even though they could have easily left it blank and nobody would have batted an eye. Then again, they give this cheat command not 1, but 4 unique death messages, but they don't bother giving a death message to SCP-966, the Sleep Killers? With all death messages now covered, this means that any other method of death that wasn't mentioned throughout this video, such as bleeding out from SCP-966's injuries, or exploding from refining an SCP-294 drink on Very Fine, yields no death message, nor does it set the death message blank on purpose. If a death message was set from being injured by something, then dying in one of these other methods will just use that as the death message, even if it doesn't fit. If there's any death message you remember seeing in your own gameplay that wasn't covered in this video, then chances are it was from a mod like Ultimate Edition Reborn or Director's Cut. From my knowledge, these 71 death messages are all the ones that exist in the vanilla version of the game. And that about covers it. The death messages are one of my favorite aspects of SCP Containment Breach. What is by itself a very simple "here's what killed you" mechanic was utilized to strengthen the world by giving extra details and insights of what goes on beyond what the player is allowed to see. They can even add further mystery into how certain SCPs work, or can be just plain funny. I love being responsible for detonating the entire facility from ordering a drink, or turning into a giant fleshy monster that requires extra assistance from another mobile task force squad to kill, or confusing the facility staff with the weird night vision goggles that 914 made. Just a tiny little blurb of text at the bottom of the game over screen is able to convert each death from a simple fail state to almost an alternative ending to the game, even if said ending is as lame as D9341 died to this Tesla gate like a doofus. The death messages certainly don't reach their maximum potential, what with all the deaths there are that don't give any message whatsoever, but the fact there are 71 messages by default is impressive enough to me. Since a lot of the game's death messages are never seen by the average player, I wanted to shed light on all of them using this video, and I hope I was able to successfully showcase all the love, passion, and detail that was poured into this little game. This video is meant to be a smaller project I can do while I figure out the details on SCP-049 in the background, so the next SCP video will absolutely be a look at 049's behavior. In the meantime, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you learned something new in the process. Also, as you can tell, I'm using a new microphone, as my last one started glitching out on me, and the mic on my replacement headset actually sounds worse, despite it being the same model. So I bought a cheap mic to use in the meantime while I potentially look into a larger microphone investment for the future. Hopefully this new mic doesn't sound awful to you all. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and as always, I will see you all in the future.